Hi, this is Bob Hessler, Chairman of the Zoning Board of Appeals. Welcome to our regularly scheduled meeting. Today is the 23rd of April. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and will be available shortly hereafter for scheduled and on-demand viewing on any smartphone or tablet device. If anyone else is recording the meeting, please let me know. And then here's the official notice. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and the Governor's March 23, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Chatham ZBA is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may do so by calling the phone number 347-379-1643, and the conference identification code is 508-871-373#. The only person that I know that is calling in, I have given them that information. Despite our best efforts, we might not be able to provide for real-time access, and we will post a record of this meeting on the town meeting's website as soon as possible. With that all having been said, I'm going to ask the board members to identify themselves, starting with Happy Van Stickle, who is with me, and state your full name.
Happy Van Stickle.
So you're all, just go ahead and sound off.
Paul Semple.
Buck Upson.
Dave Thompson.
David Veach.
Dennis Sullivan, are you there?
Yes,
we've had,
yeah.
so we've got everybody. We've got Hessler, Semple, Veach, Van Sickle, Sullivan, Thompson, and we haven't heard from Buck.
I'm sorry, Bob. This is Buck speaking.
All right, Sarah, we're ready. The rules for the meeting is Sarah will read the application. After she reads the application, the presenter will make his case or her case. Following that, anyone in favor of the appeal or the application may speak. I will then read all the letters that we've received on that particular application. Following that, anyone that wishes to speak against the application or has a specific question may do so. The applicant may then rebut testimony. The board members will then ask questions relative to the petition. Once they have finished their questions, we will close the hearing, and then we will begin deliberations. At that point, no public participation. It's strictly for the board members, unless the public participant is asked a specific question. When we have satisfied ourselves, we'll take a vote on the application, and you'll know by the end of that presentation whether you've made the grade or not. In Massachusetts, you need to get a supermajority, which are 4 out of 5 votes. And I think that's taken. I think that's done. So, Sarah, if you're ready, I will read the 2 continuances, and then we will go from there, starting with.
I will just read the hearing notifications. We'll start with application number 20-001, Timothy C. Emerson Revocable Trust, care of James M. Norcross, Esquire, P.O. Box 707, Chatham, Mass. 02633, owner of property located at 305 Main Street and 15 School Street, also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 16C, Block 60, Lot 33. The applicant seeks to enlarge, extend, or change nonconforming dwellings on a nonconforming lot via the demolition of the rear portion of the existing dwelling, 305 Main Street, and the construction of additions. The existing dwelling is nonconforming and that it is located 20.8 feet from Main Street and 7 feet from the Coastal Conservancy District, floodplain elevation 11. The proposed additions to the dwelling at 305 Main Street will be nonconforming and that they will be located 18.2 feet from the road, where a 25-foot setback is required, and 11 feet from the Coastal Conservancy District, where a 50-foot setback is required. The existing dwelling, 15 School Street, which will remain unchanged, is nonconforming, and that it is located 10.2 feet from School Street and 8.1 feet from the southerly abutter. The unnumbered dwelling, proposed to be demolished and reconstructed in a different location under a separate application, number 20-002, located behind 15 School Street, is nonconforming and that it is located 12.7 feet from the southerly abutter and within the Coastal Conservancy District. Also proposed is the construction of a new driveway as allowed by special permit under Section 4A3D of the bylaw. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Sections 6 and 9, and Sections 5B and 8D2B of the Chatham Protective Bylaw. This was continued from January 23rd, 2020, and rescheduled from March 26th, 2020, which was rescheduled to today.
I have a letter from Jamie Norcross, who's the attorney, and he's saying, "Hi, Sarah. Due to a scheduling conflict that I have, we won't be able to make the April 23rd historic meeting, and therefore, well, actually, he said historic. He means our meeting today, and therefore would ask for a continuance until your June 11th meeting." And I'm reading this since he's not attending. Any discussion from the board members? If you have a comment, please identify yourself. Following that, Mr. Semple, would you make the motion that we accept the continuance to June 11th? Any comments?
This is Paul Semple. I'll move to grant the continuance as requested.
Mr. Beach? A second.
David Veach, second the motion.
All in favor?
Yes, Happy Van Sickle.
That passes. Does each vote have to identify
Yes,
themselves?
we have to do a roll call vote. So each member that is voting, which will be Mr. Hessler.
I've got it.
Mr. Beach.
I vote yes. Mr. Semple?
I vote yes.
David Beach?
I vote yes.
Happy Van Sickle?
I vote yes.
Dave Thompson?
I vote yes.
The vote's unanimous. All right, the second petition.
Okay,
Sarah.
Bob, before we do that, could you please just turn down the speakers on your computer because we're getting a lot of feedback on the broadcast.
Okay. Got it? Is that better?
Perfect. The second request for continuance is application number 20-014, 34 Chatham Village Trust, care of Michael D. Ford, Esquire, P.O. Box 485, West Harwich, Mass. 02671, owner of property located at 34 Hallway Street, also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map, 17C, Block 37, Lot 16A. The applicant seeks to enlarge, extend, or change a non-conforming dwelling on a non-conforming lot via the demolition of the existing dwelling and garage and construction of a new dwelling. Also proposed is the construction of a new driveway and extension of an existing footpath as allowed by special permit under Section 4A3A and 4A3D of the bylaw. The existing dwelling is non-conforming and that it is located 21.3 feet from the road and within the Coastal Conservancy District. The proposed dwelling will be non-conforming and that it will be located 21.3 feet from the road where a 25-foot setback is required and will remain within the Coastal Conservancy District where a 50-foot setback is required. The lot is non-conforming and that it contains 2,460 square feet of buildable upland where 20,000 square feet is required. The lot contains 39,914 square feet in the R20 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Sections 6 and 9, and Sections 5B and 8D 2B of the Chatham Protective Bylaw.
I have received from Sarah an email from Attorney Ford saying, "Hi, Sarah, I have not responded to your RSP for the April 23rd CBA meeting for 34 Holloway Street, application number 20-014, because applicant 34 Village Trust would like to continue to the first available meeting in May. We are still speaking with the butters about aspects of the plan and request the additional time to make these discussions or have these discussions." So the first available meeting is the 28th of May. Any comments from the board for continuing this petition to that date? If you speak, identify yourselves. Following that, Paul will make the motion. David Beach will second it. Identify yourselves when you make those two motions, and then we'll have a roll call vote.
This is Paul Semple. I'll move to grant the continuance as requested to May 28th.
David Veach, I second the motion.
All in favor? I am in favor.
Paul
Robert
Semple. Paul Semple is in favor.
David Veach is in favor.
Dave Thompson's in favor.
Happy Van Sickle is in favor.
That is approved unanimously. All right, Sarah, now we go to the real ones.
Okay, our next application is application number 20-010, Tacoma Partners Limited Partnership, care of Thad Eldridge, 1038 Main Street, Chatham, Mass. 02633, owner of property located at 543 Old Harbor Road, also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 16H, Block 2, Lot 3. The applicant seeks to construct a pool with deck, pool fence, and split rail fence within the Conservancy District. The proposed deck and fencing are allowed by special permit under Section 4A3A of the Protective Bylaw. The lot contains 91,825 square feet in the R40 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 9, and Section 8D2B of the Protective Bylaw. This hearing was originally scheduled for March 26, 2020.
Thaddeus, you're on.
Thank you. Good afternoon. For the record, Thad Eldridge with East Southeast. I think Sarah is going to show the plans. If you could start with sheet 3. And away it goes. So as Sarah read, the property contains just over 2 acres of land. There's an existing home that's on it. It's a duplex home and with 2 addresses. And it's a pretty old house. Situated on Old Harbor Road across from Calyard Lane. The southwest corner of the property is above the floodplain and outside of the Coastal Conservancy District, and that's where the septic system is. The applicants are proposing a pool and a post and rail fence up against the road. And there will also be a pool fence or auto cover. They would like the option for either, and that'll be located around the pool itself. Looking in at sheet 3, we can see another pool in the neighborhood from the aerial imagery, and it gives a good overview of the property. We have been going through a rigorous conservation review, and we are continued to the work session next month, so hopefully that means we'll close out. Sarah, if you could switch to sheet 2, please. Thank you. So this shows more of a close-up of what we're talking about here. The pool itself will be elevated. It will be the same elevation as the patio that exists to the south of the building. And to go through the criteria, the site is certainly adequate in size. It's over 2 acres of area. We're not increasing the building coverage with this. There's nothing with the roof. And we're meeting the dimensional setbacks, even though we are within the Coastal Conservancy District can't meet that setback. The compatibility, there are other pools in the neighborhood, and we're going in under compatible with that. We're increasing the coverage within the Conservancy District. We're otherwise conforming. We're looking at no negative impact from the neighboring properties. This pool is located 75 feet from the closest neighbor. The proposed fence will have it's to provide a minor visual barrier from the road. And we have proper drainage. There's a trench drain that's been proposed around the pool, and that makes up for the difference in the hardscaping. We're not expecting any impact on the traffic flow, noise, litter, or the formula business. And this is in the floodplain. And again, the stone trench is proposed to mitigate the impacts of the increase in the impervious area. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Hearing none, is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak, or in the audience, anybody online that would like to speak in favor of this proposal? Please identify yourself if you do. Hearing none, I will read the correspondence. We only have one letter, and that is from Judith Giorgio, health agent. It's dated the 22nd of April. I have reviewed the plan to build an in-ground swimming pool, deck, and fencing at this property. The change does not increase the sewage flow at the property, nor does it encroach on the existing septic system. Therefore, I have no objections at this time. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak against this?
Mr. Hessler, we also
Yes.
have correspondence from the conservation agent.
Oh, that's right. I've got to find that one. Where did I put it? Oh, they're in a separate file somewhere. Do you have it, Sarah? Sarah?
I'm muted at the moment. I am pulling it up on my screen so I can read it into the record. Okay, so the conservation agent says that the commission continued this project to the May 6th work session. At the work session, the commission will review additional materials for the project. The commissioners had concerns about siting a pool in the floodplain and the content of the alternatives analysis.
Good.
Okay, is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak against this proposal or has a specific question?
I would, please. I'm in a butter.
Please identify yourself.
Yes, my name is Rosamond Volley. I have lived behind, this is the old Hiscock property. I've lived behind it for about 45, 50 years. A pool, and I was interested in the comment from Mr. Eldridge that there are pools in the neighborhood. The pool that he showed was across the road up on a height overlooking the cow yard. I'm not aware of any pools in the immediate neighborhood. I'm sure there probably are some, but a pool is an intrusive summer visitor, and it will impact the neighbors, noise, and they're taking down some trees to put that pool in. And I just, I'm sorry to see it happen. I don't have any sort of change, any proposed change to the project. I just know that it will make an impact in a neighborhood that has old houses with a good deal of land, and we used to have a lot of wildlife. That's all.
Thank you very much.
Yes, I'm sorry. It's Julia Ryan Parker. I actually did write a letter about 3 weeks ago. I faxed it and sent it by snail mail. so it's not in the file.
We didn't get it, Julie, but go ahead. I know who you
You know who I am.
Yeah.
are.
I'm not
That's the guy.
technically in a butter, but I live up above, very high above this property. I've been there since 2004. This is a rental property. The owners do not live there. They have no control over the unbelievable amount of noise that comes out of this property all summer. It's a very large rental, often used for wedding parties that are going to weddings nearby. I have been down there numerous times to remind them about the 10 p.m. noise ordinance in town, and I have tried to contact the owners, but since they don't live there, it's very difficult. So my biggest, and also I grew up in North Chatham. I'm 66 years old. That lot there is historically probably the lowest site in the neighborhood. Water pools there when it rains all the time. So I'm against this project for many reasons. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie.
Could I make one more comment, Rosamond Volley?
Sure, go ahead.
So the owners, this is part of an industry to take over properties and rent them for very high rents, which is what they've been doing. Not altogether successfully, I would say, from my observations. It's not rented all the time. They would like it to be. So this is a spec. They're hoping to sell it with a pool. It's been loosely on the market, as their properties are, and they are hoping to sell it if they have a pool on it. But it's not an owner design. It is a speculative design to maximize the sale.
Thank you. Anybody else? Questions from the board? Well, we could start. Happy, you can start.
There on in the back of this property.
Oh, Happy, it was difficult to hear your question.
Was there, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, isn't there a wetland behind the property? It's actually behind the guest portion.
Yes, there is a wetland.
Yes.
To the side and rear of the property.
Right. Well, is that any question to conservation or anybody?
Yes, this is Thad again. The wetland has been identified and the pool is located about 90 feet from the limits of the wetland. Part of the proposal with conservation is the outlet pipe from that wetland will be repaired. It has currently been broken, which causes additional flooding in the backyard. Once that's repaired, then water will go back to the more or less normal level.
And will the pool be fenced in because it is considered a structure?
The pool itself either needs an auto cover or a fence. We're proposing that fence on top of the patio, right near the pool, and not having part of the yard enclosed.
Right. So I'm assuming the patio is the front door of the house.
The patio,
Patio is more of a side door.
it's a side door.
Well, here, let me give you back to Mr. Hessler.
These are your questions from the board now, Rosamond. So, unless we haven't closed the hearing yet, but this is the opportunity for the board members to speak. And Happy is finished. Mr. Semple, do you have any questions?
I guess where we're at is that we have a fairly strong input from the Conservation Commission that they are not clear that they're going to approve this. There's no indication of the possibility that it will be approved with conditions like we often see. I have some concern about the impact on the neighborhood given the comments that we've received. I wonder if the applicant has any response to those comments.
Sure. I mean, many of the properties, we're seeing more and more pools going in, especially with the concerns over sharks and seals. And the applicants have decided to move forward with a pool. As I mentioned, it's 75 feet from the lot line. They would be more than happy to plant additional plantings on the easterly line, or I'm sorry, the southerly line that would help to shield the pool.
Has the property been subject to noise complaints?
Not to my knowledge, but based upon what the abutters have said, it sounds like it.
Okay, I have no other questions.
David Veach. And please identify yourself.
Yes, David Beach. I have no questions, Bob.
Dennis Sullivan.
Yep, this is Dennis. The only question I had was there ever any thought to move the pool behind the house so it wouldn't be visible from the street?
That would be substantially closer to the wetland.
Okay.
That was the first consideration, but as conservation is reluctant to approve a pool in the floodplain, which they have approved pools in the floodplain in the past, we didn't want to couple that with getting closer to a wetland.
Okay, but it would still be, it wouldn't be in the wetlands, but it would be within the 100 feet of the wetlands. Is that correct?
Correct. We're about 90 feet away from that wetland, and then we're in conservation jurisdiction for pretty much the entire property because floodplain is part of their resource areas.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Mr. Thompson. David, are you there?
Can you hear me, sir?
Yes.
Thank you. I think Happy asked the questions that were bothering me regarding the wetlands. I have been back there, in the last 30 years, several times. It's wet. I can't believe somebody would think about putting a pool there, but so that's basically what I had for questions for you, and they've been kind of answered. Thank you.
Mr. Upson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Buck. I had two questions. One, I wanted to clarify the comments that Mr. Semple made about his feelings on what the conservation was going to do. Were they probably going to approve it with conditions, or was Mr. Semple saying that he doubted they were going to approve it?
I guess what I was saying, Buck, is that it seemed to be more of a negative comment than we usually get in connection with things that are pending before a conservation commission before we've taken action.
Thank you. That's what I thought I heard, but I want to make sure. And I had a question for Thad, if he knew the answer. How many abutters were notified of this proposal or application? Do you know, Thad?
No.
Sarah might.
So Buck, as usual, all abutters within 300 feet, as for any zoning board application, are notified of the hearing at the mailing address on record with the assessor and tax collector within the town. We do receive a certified abutters list and mail out notifications 3 weeks prior to the hearing.
So Larson's, Flanagan's, all those abutters would have received a notice.
As long as they were on the abutters list.
Yeah, Larson's are next door, and Flanagan's across the street.
Without if they're within 300 feet, they are going to receive a notification of the hearing. And
I have just here, if you want it, I can read the names.
Oh, that would be fabulous. I'm just actually looking it up on our Maps Online program right now to find out. And you asked for which member or which abutters?
Well, I
I was looking for the number, Sarah. I have the map that came in the packet with the circle drawn.
Yes, so
I
those
have
are all
about
of the
10.
okay, those are all of the people on the certified abutters list that, and I'm just pulling up the map right now that hopefully everybody can see. This is our assessor's map of 300 feet, a 300-foot radius of all abutters that would have received notification on this hearing notice.
And so the follow-up to that, thank you. I think that's 12. So the question is, were both of the comments from the abutters, were they notified, or some of them are outside of this, the jurisdiction of the green circle?
I was
Ms. Parker Ryan is an abutter, and Ms. Raymond
We'll see about her.
is also listed on the certified abutters list.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's see.
All right, before we close the hearing, I just want to make one comment, and that is, even though we have not had COSCOM weigh in, we really do not have to have their vote for today. We can make our own decision because nothing can proceed further on this project without COSCOM's approval or vote. So we can vote, then COSCOM can make their decision after when they have their hearing in May. So with that, Mr. Semple, would you make the motion?
Yes, this is Paul Semple. I'll move to close the hearing and move into deliberations.
David Veach, second.
And all in favor by name. Robert Hessler, aye.
Happy Van Sickle, aye.
Dave Thompson,
Paul
aye.
Semple. Paul Semple, aye.
David Veach, aye.
We're all set. All right, deliberations. Happy.
Well, one of the things that bothers me is that I'm very familiar with the property, and as I remember, I think it's a 6-bedroom property, or at least 5. There's 3 in the main house, and I think 2 in the guest house. So if it's a big rental property, that's a lot of use of the swimming pool, and we know swimming pools are very loud. Noise carries across right to all the neighbors. However, I do feel we do have a right to build pools, but I think having it in the front yard, because of the wetlands situation in the back, and boy, it is very wet back there. It's very low and it's very wet. So I'm assuming there's no other place the pool could go. I would suggest the pool goes someplace else, but I don't know if that's possible. So I'm not sure I'm in favor of it.
Paul, Mr. Semple.
Yes, this is Paul Semple. I still have some hesitation, given the input that we've had from neighbors in connection with the noise impact of the pool. And clearly, it's a difficult area from the Conservation Commission. I realize we don't have to have their input in order to vote, but in a way, I would sort of like to have it. My inclination at this time would be to say, I'm not sure that it meets the necessary criteria to avoid the noise impact on the neighborhood.
David V.
I think Paul has said it well, and I'm in agreement with that. I think that, yes, we perhaps could go ahead without CONSCOM knowing one way or the other, but under all the circumstances, I would be reluctant to do that, and I do have some concerns about it not meet all of our criteria. It's a little, and I'm also agreeing with Cappy. Having it out there, visible from the road, and it just doesn't seem to be well placed. And noise and visual concerns. I have some problems with that. So I probably would be voting to deny.
Thank you. Dennis Sullivan.
Yep, this is Dennis. If I were voting, which I'm not, I would not vote to approve it. I think the pool should be moved to the rear of the lot. It would get it away from the most southerly border, abutter, which is, according to the sheets that I'm looking at, that's the most severe butter is the one directly south of it. So even though it may be more difficult as far as conservation is concerned, I think it should be moved to the rear of the house. And for that reason, I would vote against it.
Thank you. Mr. Thompson.
Mr. Hessler, I also am not really in favor of this. I think it's in the wrong position. There really is no other place that they can put it. Listening to the two young ladies who were speaking against it, we have to take their thoughts into account. It would be great to have a pool, considering all the sharks and whatever. But I just don't think it's the right place. I think we should listen to what the Conservation Commission has to say before we pass judgment on this.
All right, Mr. Upson.
This is Buck speaking. As a former member of the Conservation Commission, I feel there's a chance that with conditions, they could approve it. It's certainly in the floodplain and could be a problem, but it's also, I think, over 100 feet from the water. Of course, if we get a 8-foot or 10-foot surge, then maybe they'll have some salt water in their pool. I do agree with Mr. Thompson. It would be nice to have the opinion from the Conservation Commission on whether they're going to approve it with conditions or turn it down. Making our decision without that information is speculation. I'm kind of on the fence on what to do, but I'm not voting, so I'll let it go at that.
All right, this is Bob Hessler, the chairman. I am voting against it. I do not think we need the input from the Conservation Commission. I think the pool is a safety hazard, which is in violation of our conditions. I used to, when I used to have my own catering business, I cooked for the people that rent this property, and the last time I did it, there were 35 people in the house. I think to have 35 people in a swimming pool is a disaster waiting to happen. There's no control, there's no regulation, there's no on-site owner that's available for comment, for help, for any type of situation that might involve an accident or noise. I am violently opposed to it. I think it's ridiculous, and I'm voting against it. So I'll leave it up to the rest of the board members to make their own decision, but this property does not serve a pool. And I applaud the neighbors for coming in and speaking. Thank you. So if we're ready for a vote, go ahead,
Mr.
Paul.
Chairman, are we going to allow the applicant's representative any time
If
for
they want
rebuttal?
to, so they can withdraw, they can continue. There really hasn't been any vociferous opposition except mine, so Thad really doesn't have any numbers to count. But I'll leave it up to him if he wishes to withdraw or continue.
No, I think I can read the writing, and I'd like to ask for a withdrawal.
Without prejudice.
Yes, please.
This is Paul Semple. I'll move to approve the withdrawal without prejudice.
David Veach, second.
All those in favor, starting with Happy Van Sickle, identify yourself.
Happy Van Sickle, I approve.
Paul Semple, I approve.
David Veach.
David Veach, I approve.
And Dave Thompson.
I approve.
And this is Robert Hessler, I approve. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon.
Next one.
Okay, our next application is application number 20-011, Scorpius Enterprises, Inc., care of Philip Miletus, owner of property located at 1077 Main Street, also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 12F, Block 2, Lot 2. The applicant seeks an appeals permit under Section 225-19 of the Town of Chatham sign bylaw to allow the placement of a 12-inch by 70-inch, 5.83 square feet ladder board to the existing ground sign. The proposed total square footage of the ground sign is 25.76 square feet. The lot contains 27,907 square feet in an R20 zoning district. The proposed sign requires an appeals permit under Section 225-19 of the Chatham sign bylaw. This was originally scheduled for March 26, 2020.
Hello, Philip Miletus, Scorpios Enterprises, Knott's Landing, New England Pizza. I am proposing, as stated, a 12 by 70 inch ladder sign to the existing ground sign. Oh, they can't hear me. Can they hear me? Okay.
They can hear.
How we doing? Can anybody hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so Phil, we can hear you, and I have the rendering up on the screen for everyone to see.
Okay. So it's going to be basically the same color as the existing Knott's Landing sign as far as the background with white lettering.
I think it speaks for itself, Phil. So as far as I'm concerned, your presentation is adequate. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak in favor of this proposal? Seeing none, the only correspondence that we had was from the Town of Chatham Historic Business District Commission, and they voted unanimously on February 5th, 2020 to approve it, with their standard condition that any changes or alterations must be approved by HPDC. But they have approved what we see on our screen. So that is the extent of it. Is there anybody here who would like to speak against this proposal or has a specific question? Seeing none, questions from the board. We'll start with Paul Semple.
No questions.
David Veach.
No questions.
Happy Van Sickle.
No questions. Happy Van Sickle.
Dennis Sullivan.
No question, Dennis Sullivan.
Identify yourself.
I just did, Dennis Sullivan, no question.
Mr. Thompson.
Dave Thompson says yes, in favor.
Questions. We're looking for questions.
Well, I don't
All right.
have questions. Anything that Philip does is always top notch.
All right, got it. Mr. Upson.
Yeah, this is Buck Upson. I have no questions, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Semple.
I'll move to close the hearing and move into deliberations.
Mr. Veach.
David Veach, seconds motion.
Beginning with approval, I vote for it. Bob Hessler. Mr. Semple.
I would say that the site is appropriate.
Closing the meeting first. We're voting on closing.
I vote in favor of it. Close the meeting.
Mr. Veach.
David Veach, I vote to close the meeting.
Happy.
I vote to close the meeting.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes, I think it's a great idea to close the meeting.
All right, discussion. We'll start with Paul Semple.
All right, this is Paul Semple. I would say that the specific site is an appropriate location for the sign, that the sign will not be a nuisance or a hazard to vehicles or pedestrians, that the sign will not adversely affect properties in the neighborhood, and that the special permit requirements are in accord with the general spirit and intent of the bylaw, and this sign is also. Therefore, I would vote in favor.
Mr. Veach.
I couldn't say it any better. I would vote in favor as well.
Mrs. Van Sickle.
I vote in favor.
Dennis.
Yeah, Dennis Sullivan, yes, if I were voting, I would vote in favor, but it meets the four standards that Paul has so eloquently put forth.
Mr. Thompson.
I vote in favor. Dave Thompson.
Mr. Ups.
This is Buck speaking. I support everything that Paul Semple said. Hats off to Paul. Thank you.
And this is Bob Hessler, and I fully agree with Paul. Mr. Semple, are we ready for a vote?
Yes, I'll move to approve the application as submitted.
Mr. Beach.
David Beach, seconds.
All those in favor, starting with Mr. Semple.
Mr. Semple's in favor.
Mr. Beach.
David Beach is in favor.
Mrs. Van Sickle.
Van Sickle's in favor.
Mr. Thompson.
Mr. Thompson is also in favor.
And so am I. That passes unanimously. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you, gentlemen. And ma'am. Have a good day.
Next one.
Okay, our next application is application number 20-012, Lori A. Gallup Trust, care of William G. Litchfield Esquire, 330 Orleans Road, North Chatham, Mass. 02650. Owner of property located at 232 Shane Drive, also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 14H, Block 57, Lot B11A. The applicant seeks to enlarge, extend, or change a non-conforming dwelling on a non-conforming lot via the construction of an addition. The existing dwelling is non-conforming and that it is located 30.5 feet from Shane Drive, 27.2 feet from Bishop's Terrace, where a 40-foot setback is required, and is located 17.2 feet from the westerly abutter. The proposed addition will be non-conforming and that it will be located 13.4 feet from the westerly abutter, where a 25-foot setback is required. The existing building coverage is 2,102 square feet, 18.7%, and the proposed building coverage is 2,324 square feet, 20.8%, where 15% is the maximum allowed. The lot is non-conforming in that it contains 11,255 square feet, where 40,000 square feet is required in the R40 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 6, and Section 5B of the Chatham Protective Bylaw. This was originally scheduled for March 26th of 2020.
Mr. Litchfield.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I trust that you can hear me.
We can.
Good. With me, at least online and in spirit, is Paul Gallup, who with his wife, Lori Gallup, live at this house on Shane Drive. And they're seeking today to put a family room on the plot plan that Sarah has just shown you. It's on the right-hand side. The house, like all in the neighborhood, is on a non-conforming lot. And because for reasons we will describe later, there are coverage issues, we need a special permit in order to increase that non-conforming coverage. I'll go into the criteria, I think, directly and then talk about the specifics, unless you'd like me to do it in the opposite direction. As to adequacy of site, including building coverage and setbacks, we have a 1/4 acre site, which is adequate for the existing home, which was built under the old R10 zoning, notwithstanding the proximity to the street, both streets, the sideline and coverage issues. And I think you can find the site to be adequate for an addition of a 256 square foot family room at the rear of the house. As to compatibility of size, all of the lots in this subdivision were, as I indicated, created under prior zoning. And even the neighbor's double lot, there's a lot immediately to the right, which consists of 2 former lots. Even that is non-conforming because this is currently R40. The house is somewhat larger than some in the neighborhood, but it's certainly comparable. They're all relatively small, given that they're on relatively small lots. If you approve the special permit, it will remain compatible. The small addition at the rear, when you discount the significant roof overhang, the net increase is only 222 square feet, is incrementally marginal. The absolute number is quite small. And in any event, as you know from having gone out there, it's not visible from the street because of the large stockade fence along, I guess it's Bishop's Terrace at that point. As to the extent of increase in nonconformity, we have three, as Sarah read in the hearing notice: street proximity, we're on a corner lot, sideline and coverage nonconformities. The third page of the handout that Sarah forwarded to you, or I guess email out instead of handout, shows that as is the case with 8 of the 10 neighboring properties, we are nonconforming as to coverage. If you approve the special permit, that will increase by 222 square feet, will be 3 feet 8 inches closer to the rear lot line, but not as close as the existing shed. One of the reasons that so many houses in this neighborhood have coverage issues, aside from having been built under prior zoning, is that almost all of them were built on slabs. They were designed as single-story ranch houses, for lack of a better word. None of them have, with the exception of some of the newer ones, none of them have basements, and they all have either garages or sheds. We have both for storage because there's no basement storage, and that's why we have a coverage issue. As the suitability of site, the site has been developed for residential uses since the early 1960s. There are no environmental issues, and none will result from this if you approve the special permit. As to scale, siting, mass, views, and vistas, it is a single-story home, typical of the neighborhood, built, almost all of them were by the Campanelli Construction Company in the 1960s. They're all very similar in size and in appearance. If you approve the special permit, as Sarah has just shown, at the rear behind the stockade fence, it will have no impact on scale or on streetscape. The closest abutters have been consulted and do not object to the addition of the family room at the rear. Paul Gallup and Lori have spoken with Suzanne Frank immediately to the south, the Charbonniers immediately to the east. Those are the two most affected, as well as people on the north side of Bishop's Terrace, the Finnegans and Don Frank. They have no objections. The other criteria are not really at issue. The chair will read a letter from the health agent indicating that she has no concerns. This is not a bedroom. So the issue, as you know, is whether this proposed small addition at the rear and behind a stockade fence, and the fence itself is shielded by some evergreens, is substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the current non-conforming structure on a non-conforming lot, as shown there. You're seeing the rear elevation, although frankly, no one will see the rear elevation, but that's where the family room is proposed. While the percent increase is relatively high, or in excess of 20%, others in the neighborhood are in excess of 20%. And again, the absolute increase, the actual number increase is quite small, 200 odd square feet, as is the house itself. The living area of the house overall will increase from less than 1,600 square feet to something slightly over 1,800 square feet. And again, removing the shed to compensate and lower coverage just isn't feasible. The changes to the rear lot line behind the same stockade fence is again less than 4 feet. One question that I asked Paul that you might ask is, if you look at the floor plan, we currently have a den. Why do you need a family room as well? The answer is fairly simple. Paul has a home business, as well as his long-term involvement with both the Chatham Athletic Association and the Cape Cod Baseball League. And Lori is a substitute teacher. The existing den serves as their respective home offices and isn't really a family room. That's the reason why we have the need for a family room in addition to the so-called den. So in light of the criteria and the plans, I think you can find that this proposed small addition on this house in this neighborhood, particularly when there is general neighborhood support and certainly no neighborhood opposition of which we are aware, is not substantially more detrimental than the current nonconformity. Paul and I would both be happy to try to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Litchfield. Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to speak in favor of this proposal? Seeing none, I'll read the only correspondence that we have, which Bill referred to, and that is from Judith Giorgio, health agent. It is dated the 16th of April. I have reviewed the plan to add an addition to the house at this property. The proposed plan will not add septic flow, nor will it encroach on the existing septic system. I have no concerns about the proposal. Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to speak against this proposal or has a specific question? Hearing none, questions from the board. Mr. Sullivan.
Dennis Sullivan, no questions.
Mr. Thompson.
Dave Thompson, no questions.
Mr. Upson.
This is Buck, no questions.
Mr. Semple.
Paul Semple, no questions.
Mr. Veach.
David Veach, no questions.
Happy Van Sickle.
Happy Van Sickle, no questions.
We will close the hearing. Mr. Semple, a motion to close the hearing.
I move to close the hearing and move into deliberations.
That was Paul Semple, for the record. Second, Mr.
David
Veach.
Veach seconds the motion.
All in favor, starting with Mr. Semple.
Paul Semple in favor.
Mr. Veach.
David Veach in favor.
Happy Van Sickle.
Happy Van Sickle in favor.
Mr. Thompson.
Dave Thompson in favor.
And I'm Bob Hessler, the chairman. I'm in favor. Passes unanimously. Deliberations. Mr. Sullivan.
I'm not, Dennis Sullivan, I'm not voting, but if I were, I would certainly vote in favor of it. I think it meets all the standards of our bylaw, and for that reason, I would vote in favor of it.
Thank you. Mr. Thompson.
I have really not too much to say. I'm in favor of it. It looks like a logical addition to this home.
For the record, that was Mr. Thompson. Mr. Upson.
Yes, I'm in favor of it. I thought that there is over 24 neighbors that got letters and there was no letters of opposition. The lots are small, were originally R10, and it seems like a reasonable request and I would approve it.
For the record, that was Mr. Upson. Mr. Semple.
Yes, Paul Semple, I agree. It satisfies all of our criteria and is not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood.
Mr. Veach.
Yes, I agree with David Veach. I agree with all the previous.
That was David Veach, for the record. Mrs. Van Sickle.
Happy Van Sickle, I agree with my board members.
I don't think we need any criteria. I mean, any
Conditions. Conditions.
No. Bill, when do you think they're going to start? I don't think we need conditions. At least with the virus we've got, you could do residential construction. So they theoretically could start the end of May, early June. When they talk to the neighbors, do they indicate that they would wait till after the summer, or any feedback there? Bill?
This is Paul Semple. I don't think I see a need for conditions given the small nature of the change.
Okay, that's all in the back anyway. Then would you please make a motion to approve and identify yourself?
Yes, this is Paul Semple. I'll move to approve the application as submitted.
Mr. Veach?
David Veach, second.
All those in favor? Mr. Semple, identify yourself.
Paul Semple, aye.
Mr. Veach?
David Veach, aye.
Mrs. Van Sickle?
Happy Van Sickle, aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Dave Thompson, aye.
And Bob Hessler, chairman, yes. It passes unanimously. Thank you,
Thank you,
Mr. Litchfield.
Thank you. I apologize for not being able to answer your question about conditions. I somehow was cut off. I've returned, but I gather you don't need me to say anything further, and we appreciate
Yep, we're all done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sarah, for the next one, did you have
Okay.
any luck getting in touch with the Longs?
I did. Both the Longs and the representative, Mr. Burns, are present at the meeting. So I will go ahead and read the hearing notice. It's application number 20-013, Christina and William Long, care of Peter Burns, 52 Southwester Drive, Harwich, Mass. 02645. Owner of property located at 257 Round Cove Road, also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 8J, Block 33, Lot C 282. The applicant seeks to enlarge, extend, or change a nonconforming dwelling on a nonconforming lot via the construction of an addition. The existing dwelling is nonconforming and that it is located 20 feet from the easterly and westerly abutters. The proposed addition will be nonconforming and that it will be located 21 feet from the easterly abutter where a 25-foot setback is required. The existing building coverage is 2,367 square feet, and the proposed building coverage is 2,402 square feet, where 2,850 square feet is the maximum allowed. The lot is non-conforming, and that it contains 135 feet of frontage, where 150 feet is required, and contains 21,200 square feet, where 60,000 square feet is required in the R60 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 6, and Section 5B of the Chatham Protective Bylaw.
Mr. Burns, you're on the stage.
Mr. Burns. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
We are proposing an improvement to the existing basement bulkhead entrance. It's only 35 square feet total. There's no footing proposed. It will use all existing footings as structure. And the reason is the conventional steel bulkhead is inconvenient to use, and we're going to install a typical door with a roof over it. As I said, only 35 square feet. And we are, I don't know if anybody visited the site, we are not protruding past the dwelling to the neighbor abutter. We are, in fact, 2 to 3 feet inside. And that's it.
Hold on. That's my dog.
It's okay, we got one too.
Mr. Burns, do you have the criteria to go through, that you could go through the 10 criteria that we have? If you don't, we'll sort of waive it because we can't give the.
I do not have that, sir.
If he doesn't, I can quickly put it up on my screen if he'd like to read it, Bob.
Let's do that just to make everything.
Okay, I'm going to close off my screen sharing for a second so I can just pull up that document.
Just waiting for that.
What criteria?
It's probably some kind of checklist why we has to go there.
Okay, can you see the criteria in front of you right now?
I do.
Okay, so you're just going to go through the 12 different points, and that is the criteria you need to speak to in regard to the application.
It's okay. Oh, that was my dog. So I'm sorry, you want me to address each line item here?
Yes, please.
Okay, you got me.
The first one is it's an existing structure.
Adequacy of the size of the site, including but not limited to all the buildings. So okay, number one, we have the size of the existing structure and coverage. It's a non-conforming situation. The owner has no control over that. And number two, the compatibility of the proposed structure would be in keeping with the home and simple and not obtrusive at all or detriment to the abutter. Number three, the proposed renovation doesn't increase any non-conforming because, as I said, the bulkhead is already there and has been there since day one of the
That's
building
good.
of the dwelling.
Go to the next one.
Okay, number four,
There's nothing there.
I don't see anything there.
Five.
It's just a typical manicured lawn. There's no impact. None on five either. It's, as I said, 35 square feet. Very, very tiny. Compatibility rules.
It's residential. You're fine. 7. Probably not applicable.
No, not applicable.
Right.
Not.
Impact
No.
on safety, no. Noise and litter, no.
No.
10, you're done.
I see your
Okay.
point. Super.
Is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak in favor of this proposal? Seeing none, or hearing none, the only comment I have is from the health agent Judith Giorgio in a letter dated April 16th of 2020. I have reviewed the plan to add an addition to the house at the property. The proposed plan will not have septic flow, nor will it encroach on the existing septic system. I have no concerns about the proposal. Is there anybody in the audience wishes to speak against this proposal or has a specific question? Seeing none, questions from the board. Mr. Upson.
This is Buck Upson speaking. I have no questions.
Mr. Semple.
Paul Semple speaking, no questions.
Mr. Veach.
David Veach, no questions.
Mrs. Van Sickle.
Happy Van Sickle, no questions.
Mr. Sullivan.
Dennis Sullivan, no questions.
Mr. Thompson.
Dave Thompson, no questions.
This is Bob Hessler. I have no questions. Mr. Semple, may I have a motion to close the hearing?
This is Paul Semple. I'll move to close the hearing and move into deliberations.
Mr. Veach.
David Veach, second.
All those in favor, starting with Mr. Semple.
Paul Semple, I'm in favor.
Mr. Veach.
David Veach is in favor.
Happy Van Sickle.
Happy Van Sickle in favor.
Mr. Thompson.
Dave Thompson in favor.
As am I. Discussion from the board. Let's see. Mr. Upson.
Yes, this is Buck Upson. There's no way that this is substantially detrimental to the neighborhood. It's very small, and I think it's a good project to approve.
Mr. Semple.
This clearly meets all our criteria. It's a de minimis change. I will vote in favor.
Mr. Veach.
Same is true for me. It's an improvement, actually. I've never liked those bulkheads myself. But it's certainly not substantially more detrimental, meets all the criteria. We'll vote in favor.
Happy.
Happy Van Sickle, I agree with those guys.
Mr. Thompson.
Dave Thompson, I agree with everything that's been said.
Mr. Sullivan.
Yes, Dennis Sullivan, and also agree with everything that's been commented upon.
And I agree. It's a nice addition. Mr. Semple, are we ready for a vote without conditions?
Yes, I'll move to, this is Paul Semple, I'll move to approve the application as submitted.
Mr. Beach.
David Veach seconds most.
All those in favor, starting with Mr. Semple.
Paul Semple in favor.
Mr. Beach.
David Veach in favor.
Happy.
Happy Van Sickle in favor.
Mr. Thompson.
Dave Thompson's in favor.
And I am too. Bob Hess for chairman. It passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Burns or Mr. and Mrs. Long. We appreciate you sitting through this. You're good to go.
Thank you very much.
Okay, our next one is application number 20-015. Edward Acton, owner of property located at 48 Hillcrest Road, also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 15H, Block 53, Lot M7. The applicant seeks to modify special permit number 19-087 granted on November 21st, 2019, which allowed for the demolition of the existing dwelling and the construction of a new dwelling. The applicant now seeks to modify special permit number 19-087 to allow for the proposed dwelling to be located 20 feet from the southerly abutter where a 5-foot setback is required. The building coverage of 2,692 square feet, 14.9%, and all other setbacks approved under special permit numbers 19-087 will remain unchanged. The lot is non-conforming in that it contains 18,040 square feet, where 40,000 square feet is required in an R40 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 6 and 9, and Sections 5B and 8D 2B of the Protective Bylaw.
Hello, this is Ed Acton. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. For the record, my name is Ed Acton. My wife and I own 48 Hillcrest Road in Chatham. With your approval, we'd like to modify our special permit 19-087, which was granted on November 21st, 2019. We'd like to modify it basically due to a miscommunication on my part to my engineer. The building plans I submitted to you in November showed a Bilco C basement at the back of the property with a 1-foot extension on it. But my site plan did not show that 1-foot extension, and that mistake was caught after the foundation was poured when the as-built plan of the foundation was completed. Typically, a Bilco is not included in the setback, but because they're under 30 square feet, but the 1-foot extension on my Bilco increased the square foot area to 35 square feet, and therefore it's not exempt. That's the only issue. The Bilco is now 20 feet from the lot line, as is the approved utilities location from the previous meeting that was approved. The previous house was non-conforming in the same setback, as it was 14 feet from the lot line, and the existing shed on the property at that point was 8 feet from the property line. So there is still an improvement of over 6 feet with our new house. The actual house itself meets the setback as it's 25.2 feet from the lot line. I believe the house still meets the criteria for a special permit as it did in the previous filing. The compatibility of size, all the house, if you drove by the property, is pretty much complete on the outside. We're currently doing the rough plumbing, electric, and we're actually looking at insulating perhaps as early as next week. But the neighbors are very happy with the house. They feel it's an improvement. It certainly conforms to the neighborhood, and in fact has better conformity as the rear setback is a increase of 6 feet from the previous house. Suitability of the proposed house is designed for the
Mr.
site.
Atkin, you don't have to go through the criteria again.
Oh, okay.
You explained why you're here, and that's good enough for us.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anybody here who wishes to speak in favor of this proposal? This is Bob Hessler, by the way. Seeing none, I'll read the correspondence. The plan as proposed will not increase the septic flow of the property. A new septic system is proposed and a permit has been issued by the Health Department. I have no concerns regarding the modification of the permit, and that is from Judith Giorgio, the health agent, dated the 16th of this month. Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak against this modification to the previously approved special permit? Seeing none, questions from the board. We will start with Mr. Semple.
Paul Semple, no questions.
Mr. Veach.
David Veach, no questions.
Happy.
Happy Van Sickle, no questions.
Dennis Sullivan.
Dennis Sullivan, no questions.
Mr. Thompson.
Dave Thompson, no questions.
Mr. Upson.
Buck Upson, no questions.
And nor do I, Bob Hessler. Mr. Semple, may we have a motion to close the hearing?
I'll move to, Paul Semple, I move to close the hearing and move into deliberations.
Mr. Veach.
David Veach, second.
All those in favor say aye, starting with Mr. Semple.
Paul Semple, aye.
David
Mr.
Veach, aye.
Happy.
Happy Van Sickle, aye.
Mr. Thompson.
Dave Thompson, aye.
And Bob Hessler, I'm in favor as well. Deliberations, Mr. Semple.
Yes, this is Paul Semple. It's clearly a de minimis change, unfortunate as it may be, but it's still an improvement over what existed there prior to this. So I think it meets our criteria. It is not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood.
Mr. Veach.
I completely agree.
I think Mr. Semple's been practicing for these
Well,
presentations.
I wanted to use the term de minimis, but he beat me to it. So
Happy Van Sickle.
What were I agreeing to? Yes, I agree to it all.
Mr. Sullivan.
Yes, Dennis Sullivan, I agree with what Paul had commented on.
Mr. Thompson.
I agree 100%.
Mr. Upson.
Buck Upson, it meets the criteria. It's not substantially detrimental. It's very small and there's no objections from the abutters. I approve.
This is Bob Hessler. I approve, and thank you, Mr. Acton and your builder, for being honest men. We appreciate it. Mr. Semple, ready for a vote with no conditions?
Yes, Paul Semple, I'll move to approve the application as submitted.
Mr. Veach.
David Veach, second.
All those in favor, and we're going to start with Mr. Thompson.
Dave Thompson, aye.
Happy Van Sickle.
Happy Van Sickle, I agree.
Mr. Veach.
David Veach, aye.
Mr. Semple.
Paul Semple, aye.
Bob Hessler, Chairman, aye. It's approved unanimously. Thank you very much, Mr. Acton.
Thank you. Be safe.
All right. I think we have one more.
Okay, wait, no, we have two more.
Two more.
Our next application is application number 20-016, John W. Janelle, care of Dan Crodu, 941 Main Street, Harwich, Mass. 02645. Owner of property located at 139 Pine Knoll Avenue, also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 5C, Block 47, Lot S59. The applicant seeks to enlarge, extend, or change a non-conforming dwelling on a non-conforming lot via the elevation of the existing dwelling. Also proposed is the reconstruction of an existing deck and the construction of new stairways. The existing dwelling is non-conforming and that it is located 28 feet from the Coastal Conservancy District floodplain elevation 12. The proposed elevated dwelling and reconstructed deck will be non-conforming, and that the deck will be located 28 feet from the Coastal Conservancy District where a 50-foot setback is required. The building coverage will remain 830 square feet, 10.3%, where 15% is the maximum allowed. The lot is non-conforming, and that it contains 8,102 square feet, where 20,000 square feet is required in the R20 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 6, and Section 5B of the Chatham Protective Bylaw.
We're ready.
Good afternoon, Dan Croto from Moran Engineering. I'm here, and the property owner, who is the applicant, is also available for questions. This property is a 1950 subdivision. The house is a 1962 built house per the assessing information, 780 square foot, 1 story. Approximately 14 feet tall from the foundation to the ridge. It was obviously built under a different zoning code and building code, and before the R20 and the conservancy districts. The proposal is to lift the house and put a new foundation under the house. It's light wood construction with no chimney, so it should be a pretty easy lift for the guys in the business. Lift the deck along with the house, and then the only addition in site coverage would be the adding of the extra steps to get down to grade. And then, of course, the landscaping after the construction and putting the stone driveway back together. The house currently, to anybody who stopped by or saw it on the Google Earth or a program like that, is below grade. It sits down from the road. It's actually below grade on the northeast corner, it would be. And then on the northwest corner, you can actually see the top of the footing. So it was certainly built under a different building code time, and doesn't meet any of the current, the foundation itself doesn't meet any current building code. Frost protection. In the winter, the structure moves with the frost. So it's time for the owner to fix the issues. It is a owner occupied. It's not a rental for the neighborhood. And it's as an engineer, I would advise it. It's not safe during a major storm at this point in time with a substandard, inadequate foundation. It is going through conservation. I believe we pretty much got approval of conservation. They had no issues. They're waiting on this board's approval or review of it. So we as for landscaping and we need to meet their requirements with the natural landscaping and a little bit of mitigating for the extra stairs, which I believe was just around 20 square feet. We need to add, or the owner's adding conservation mitigation plants towards on the wetland side to the south. He'll also be adding a drainage trench around the building for the roof. Storm water coming off the roof will land into a drainage trench to dissipate the roof drainage. The addition of the improvement the owner is looking for will give him also not only a stable house, but will give him storage and a place to put his utilities. The project, if it's approved, would move forward in the fall. Going through the criteria, adequacy of size and site, it's 10.3% building coverage in a 15% building coverage district. So that will not change. There's no additional roof area added. The building height will be going from an existing building height, which is the ridge above the grade. The grade plane drops off quite a bit in back. So whereas in front, the structure's only 14 feet tall currently. In back, it would be closer to 17 or so. So the building height would still only end up being 20.2 feet the grade, using the grade plane formula. Compatibility of size of structure with neighborhood is it's 780 square feet, 1 story. Be very similar to the older older structures in the neighborhood, and certainly the one straight across the street and the one to the straight to the west. The proposal would put the foundation of this structure similar to the one straight across the street, and still about 2.5 feet below the structure to the west. Extent of the proposed increase in non-conforming nature, we don't think that it increases anything non-conforming. Suitability of the site to the neighboring properties, we think that it's existing a little bit below neighboring properties and view from the road, and we think it'll improve that. Conservation is we think we've got approval through conservation. They're looking at the natural environment and slopes and stormwater. Impact of scale in the neighborhood, we don't believe there's much of a change. We do think it's bringing it up to the road level or just above the road level is an improvement in the view to the neighborhood. Compatibility of proposed use, no change in use, residential, staying owner-occupied residential, and the closest properties are also owner-occupied. Adequacy of method of sewage, no change on the sewage. There was a septic system put in the early 2000s. We did look at it to make sure that our basement floor was going to be above the leach area as required by the health department. It was very low use, maybe 50 gallons a day. So it's in great shape, the Title V. Impact on traffic flow, no change, same driveway location. Noise and litter, no change. Adequacy of utilities, same utilities. This will allow the owner to put to get rid of the water meter pit and put the water meter into the foundation. And also, the owner's hoping to do underground electric and cable lines to the right nearby utility pole on the northwest lot corner. In the floodplain, luckily, it's even though it's abuts adjacent to coastal wetland, it's the grade is quite a bit higher. He's at elevation, his top of foundation will be at elevation 29, so he's not within the floodplain conservancy district. With that, we think it's an improvement to the neighborhood. It's certainly something the owner needs to have a stable house and a safe house, and a safety in a storm is we think is a positive thing for the neighborhood as well. So with that, I'll leave it. I'll leave my presentation, and myself and the owner are here for any questions.
Thank you. Nice.
Thank you.
Is there anybody who wishes to speak in favor of this proposal? Hearing none, we have a letter from Judith Giorgio dated the 16th of April. The proposed foundation will not add septic flow to the property. However, the foundation will encroach on the required setback to the septic system and must be approved by the Board of Health. Sarah, for some reason, I have lost the letter from the Conservation Commission.
Okay.
Could you read it?
I have the Conservation Commission letter dated April 22nd from the Conservation Agent Callie Harper. And with regard to this application, it says the Commission continued the project to the May 6th work session. It is believed that the order of conditions can be approved with special and general conditions.
Thank you. Is there anybody in the audience wishes to speak against this proposal or has a specific question? Hearing none. Questions from the board? Happy.
I have no questions.
Dennis Sullivan.
Dennis Sullivan, no questions.
Mr. Thompson.
Dave Thompson, no questions.
Mr. Upson.
Buck Upson, no questions.
Mr. Semple,
Paul Semple, no questions.
Mr. Veach,
David Veach, no questions.
and nor do I, Bob Hessler. Request a proposal to close the hearing. Mr. Semple,
Paul Semple, I move to close the hearing and move into deliberations.
Mr.
David
Veach.
Veach, second.
All in favor, starting with Mr. Semple.
Paul Semple, aye.
Mr. Veach.
David Veach, aye.
Happy Van Sickle.
Happy Van Sickle, aye.
Dennis Sullivan.
No, I'm not voting on this.
I know, but I just wanted you to feel like you're part of the group. Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Buck, we'll throw you in too, just for the fun of it.
Yes, Buck Upson.
And Bob Hessler, Chairman, I am in favor of closing the hearing. Deliberations. Mr. Semple.
I think clearly, as Paul Semple, I think it clearly meets our criteria. I have no objections to the proposal. I think it's prudent to add the additional stairs. Otherwise, it's going to be a big drop off there.
Mr. Veach.
Yeah, this certainly is an improvement and much needed. The only question that I'm wondering is, I know he's said that they wouldn't plan to start it till fall. I look at that neighborhood and how tight everything is. I wonder if we want to add a standard summer condition just in case or not. I'm open to just throw that out there.
Okay, we can talk about it.
Sure.
Well, actually, why don't we get a response from the petitioner, or tell him what our normal boilerplate language is and see if it's satisfactory. What we say is from June 30th until Labor Day, there will be no exterior construction allowed. No work shall be permitted on the weekends, and construction activity between 8 and 5 p.m. only. That's what Mr. Veach is talking about in terms of conditions.
And all construction vehicles, sorry, Sarah Clark, all construction vehicles and materials must be maintained on site.
Excuse me. That would be perfectly fine with myself and the owner and applicant, because the construction period would definitely be after Labor Day.
Okay, let's put it in. Where was I? Happy. Are you in favor?
I'm in favor. Happy Van Sickle.
Mr. Thompson.
Dave Thompson is in favor also.
Bob Hessler, Chairman, I am too. It's a nice project. Mr. Semple, vote.
Paul Semple, I'll move to approve the application with the conditions suggested.
Mr. Veach.
David Veach, second.
All those in favor, starting with Mr. Thompson.
Dave Thompson is in favor.
Happy Van Sickle.
Happy Van Sickle, aye.
Mr. Veach.
David Veach, aye.
Mr. Semple.
Paul Semple, aye.
Bob Hessler, Chairman, yes. Nice project. Good luck. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thanks.
All right, and our last application of the day is application number 20-017, Caroline C. Roberts, care of Benjamin Zender Esquire, P.O. Box 2300, Orleans, Mass. 02653, owner of property located at 35 Stillwater Road, also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map, 9J, Block 33, Lot SW11. The applicant proposes to construct a detached garage with a second-floor accessory dwelling unit, ADU, on a non-conforming lot, which requires the grant of a special permit. The lot is non-conforming in that it contains 36,934 square feet, where 60,000 square feet is required in the R60 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 9, and Section 8D2B of the Chatham Protective Bylaw.
Mr. Zender.
Good afternoon, everybody. How are you all?
We are well.
Good. It's nice to talk to you all. I hope everybody's doing well. For the record, my name is Ben Zender, and I'm on the line on behalf of Caroline Roberts, who's the owner of the property at 35 Stillwater Drive. What she's proposing is to construct a detached garage on the lower level, and on the second level, a one-bedroom accessory dwelling unit. And I think Sarah's putting up right now the site plan. You can see the garage is located, so it conforms to the 25-foot sideline setback requirement. Structure is 24 feet by 26 feet, and the dwelling unit on the second floor is approximately 624 square feet in size, which brings it within the maximum dwelling size under your bylaw. Because this is being constructed in a separate structure, and also because the lot is non-conforming both as to size and as to frontage, it requires a special permit from this board. So with the chair's permission, I'd like to very quickly just run through your special permit granting criteria. Can you all hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Ben.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Sarah. Okay, so the first criteria is the adequacy of the site. I'm hopeful the board members were able to go out and see the site. The garage location was staked. It's as you come in the driveway, it's to the left of the driveway. The lot, although it's non-conforming, has just under 37,000 square feet of area, and we believe the lot is adequate for both the existing dwelling and the proposed garage structure. The dwelling itself is over 50 feet from any setback line, and the garage is 26 feet from the westerly lot line where 25 feet is required. The lot will remain conforming as to building coverage as well. Criteria number 2, the compatibility of the size of the structure with neighboring properties. The proposed building is 24 by 26 feet, has 2 stories, and we believe that with a building height of 22 feet, it's 8 feet less than the maximum allowable height in district. It has a gabled roof. It's a compact structure. The design is consistent with the Cape style of architecture in the neighborhood and throughout the town. And so we believe that it's compatible both in terms of size and architecture with the neighboring properties. In section 3, the extent of the proposed increase in non-conforming nature of the structure or use. We're not proposing to increase or create any non-conformity with regard to the lot. The non-conformities of both lot area and frontage will remain, but there won't be any additional non-conformities created. Section 4, suitability of the site, including but not limited to impact in neighboring properties or natural environment, slopes, vegetation, wetlands, groundwater, water bodies, and stormwater runoff. As the members who saw the site will note, the location of the proposed garage and ADU is on a level and flat section of the lot. If you go onto the property, the lot slopes towards the rear once you get past the house, but we're not proposing to do any construction in the sloping area. So there's some vegetation in this area. It's scrub trees and some larger trees which will be removed, but we believe the site is suitable with regard to those criteria. 5, impact of scale, siting, and mass on neighborhood visual character, including views, vistas, and streetscapes. The neighborhood is primarily a wooded, somewhat rural area, not overly rural. The area around Locust is a sort of a residential neighborhood characterized by quiet streets, wooded and grassy yards, typical New England-style homes and driveways. This particular lot, the house is set well back from Stillwater Drive. The garage will be a little closer, but will still be a fair distance back. I believe it's roughly 96 feet back from Stillwater Road. So we think that there won't be any significant impact in scale, siting, or mass in the neighborhood. Compatibility of the proposed use with neighboring uses. It's a residential single-family dwelling neighborhood, which will still remain here. This ADU use will be incidental and subordinate to the use of the area for or the property for single-family residential use. The proposed garage, which is what this will appear to be from the street and from neighboring properties, is consistent with accessory uses of residential lots, and the bylaw, the new bylaw that provides for ADUs, contemplates the siting of ADUs within structures of this type. 7, adequacy of method of sewage disposal. There's an existing sewer system. There's water connections. The Board of Health is going to require either that an IA treatment component is added or that a bedroom be removed from the existing residence to provide the necessary flow for the ADU, which is what, in fact, the applicant proposes to do. She will remove a bedroom from the dwelling to provide the adequate flow for the septic for the ADU. Impact on traffic flow and safety. We don't anticipate any significant impacts on traffic flow and safety. It's a single bedroom rental unit. There will be, of course, someone coming in and parking a vehicle to access that unit, but there will also be the reduction of a bedroom in the house. So we don't think there will be any significant impact on traffic or safety in the area. Noise or litter. We don't expect the use to generate any unusual noise or litter other than one bedroom residential use, which will be contained within garbage facilities. Adequacy of utilities and other public services. It's served by existing electrical, telephone, gas, cable utilities, and we believe that they're adequate for the service for the unit as well. And then 11, formula business establishment, we don't think is applicable. So unless the board has any questions, I'm hopeful that the board will see fit to approve this special permit and grant it to the applicant. And I'll remain on the line to answer questions from the
Thank
board.
you. Is there anybody online wishes to speak in favor of this proposal? Hearing none, I'll read the correspondence. This is from Judith Giorgio, health agent, dated 4/16/2020. I have reviewed the plan to build a garage with an accessory dwelling unit, 1 bedroom at the above noted address. The property is a Zone 2 of a public water supply. The applicant is proposing to add an additional bedroom. The existing dwelling is, as noted, is 4 bedrooms. This must be approved by the Chatham Board of Health for an alternative nitrogen reducing septic system in accordance with Title V and the Town of Chatham Board of Health. As the attorney has indicated, they're going to get rid of one of the bedrooms, so it's really not an issue. The other correspondence that I have, this is a letter from Bernard Cornwell and his wife Judy, and they live at 325 Old Comers Road. This is in the Town of Chatham, Zoning Board of Appeals, dated the 8th of April, application number 2017. There are very few of us who would be affected by the construction of a detached garage at 35 Stillwater Road, and adding such a floor with a second floor ADU can only enhance the area. So I'm encouraging the board to approve it. Bernard Cornwell. And then we have a letter from Tom and Heidi Quill, who live at 85 Stillwater and are the immediate abutter. This is dated the 19th of 2020. Our property abuts Mrs. Roberts on the west side. We have several concerns about the proposed structure. We have contacted Mrs. Roberts about these. She has provided only a partial response, as she told us she is awaiting a more exact response from her advisor. We are not attorneys and trust this letter is in a format acceptable to you. Number 1, our deck is an important place for outdoor enjoyment and entertainment in warm weather. This deck area faces directly into the area where the proposed garage/ADU will be built. The applicant states that, quote, the lot and its neighbors are well vegetated and provide good visual screening for privacy purposes, unquote. However, what is now a pleasant view of gardens and vegetation will include a 22-foot high wall with windows under the proposed plan. This wall will be sited 26 feet from our property line. If nothing else, our sight lines will be compromised. We do understand that a large oak tree will be saved, and this could help to mitigate, bear with me here, the obtrusiveness of the building wall. At the least, we would appreciate confirmation of retention of the oak and that satisfactory mitigation plannings will be made to soften the view of the 22-foot high wall. We also wonder if the building could be located on the east side of her property. That side of the property is more heavily screened from neighbors on that side than is the case on our side, and thus will actually provide good visual screening for privacy purposes. Number 2, Protective Bylaw Section 7B-19-4C, the windows of the ADU could inhibit our privacy, which is addressed in this section. Number 3, Protective Bylaw number 7B-19-4-K appears to require that the ADU to be the principal residence of the renter. We are curious about the amount of time the renter will occupy the ADU. We understand Mrs. Roberts is a Florida resident. She spends a diminishing amount of time at the property. If her daughter will also be a part-time occupant of the ADU, it appears we will be getting another infrequently occupied structure adjoining our property. In this connection, one of the purposes of ZBA approving construction of an ADU is to support a year-round community. This project does not appear to meet that purpose. As stated above, we are concerned about the negative impact on our property if the proposed building were to be relocated to the other side of Mrs. Roberts' property or elsewhere, so it is not to be so obtrusive to us. We would support building the proposed ADU. Very truly yours, Tom and Heidi Quill. Before you address those concerns, Counselor, is there anybody in the audience wishes to speak against this proposal or has a specific question? Tom Quill, were you able to sign on, or is it too early for you to do it? He's not there.
I'm not seeing, I'm not sure if he's calling in from a specific phone number. The only phone number I see on here is a 221 number. So I'm not sure if Mr. Quill, who I have been speaking with, and sorry, this is Sarah Clark, speaking with today, was actually able to sign on. I did provide him with the phone number and the conference ID to be able to log in, but I'm not sure if he's here at this time.
Okay. Mr. Zender, could you address his concerns? I know you've got affidavits about the residency and the daughter's intentions and all that good stuff. So if you could walk us through it and at least answer Mr. Quill's concerns.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure I can completely address his concerns. It's probably the first time that I've had an abutter be concerned that a property won't be used enough. But the requirements of the ADU are that the principal owner, be a resident of Chatham, and we've submitted the affidavit of Ms. Roberts. It's true she does split her time between here and Florida, and she's spending a little bit more time this year than prior years. But this is still her residence, and she submitted the affidavit, and she will be required under your bylaw to continue to provide that affidavit to the building commissioner each year. The use of the property as a rental will be rented on an annual basis. It's not just her daughter. It's either her daughter or she has a cousin who's about to retire from Harvard, who they're in their 70s looking for a place down here, and they're in the mix as well for an annual rental unit. So I think that the unit's going to meet the requirements and also the intent of the bylaw that it add to the housing stock as an ADU. The location was pretty carefully chosen because of the slope of the lot and the pitch of the lot, as well as the fact that there's certain landscaping on the other side of the lot that would be disturbed. It can't go in the rear of the lot because of the septic system and the slope behind the house. It provides access between the house and the garage for Carrie Roberts. And this particular structure could be built as a matter of right. But we're not really talking about the structure's impact on the neighbor, but the impact of the use of the structure on the neighbor. The elevations, and Sarah, I don't know if you can pull those up, but the elevation of the structure on the west side facing the Quills is really just 2 windows on the garage level and 2 windows on the upper level. There's no deck. There are no other openings on that side. And the members that visited the site may have noticed that the Quills deck is a significant distance from their own property line. My own eyeballing it looks like it's about 50 feet or so from the deck to their easterly property line, and then we have another 26 feet to this structure. So I think that this use as a single bedroom is going to be a fairly minimal use in terms of impact on their property. We'll certainly save that oak tree. I'm not sure what they're looking for screening. Carrie's certainly more than happy to put some screening in there to minimize any obtrusion. And I think that's the word that the Quills used. I'm not sure it's a word, but I used it again on that side. But I think the structure, it meets all of your zoning requirements. It meets your height requirements. The lot coverage is minimal. So other than the fact that they're concerned about it being there, I'm just not sure it doesn't meet the requirements for the special permit. And
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you. Questions from the board? We'll start with Mr. Upson again.
This is Buck speaking. So I'm a little concerned about, I'm not familiar with the affidavit that the attorney mentioned, but on the tax assessor's records for the town of Chatham, the applicant shows her address as somewhere in Florida as opposed to here in Chatham. So the concern would be, and I don't know all the details. This is our second ADU application. How many months does Mrs. Roberts have to reside in the primary home at 35 Stillwater? I don't know who answered that. Does Sarah answer that, or somebody from community development?
Sarah, go ahead.
So I can tell you that the way the bylaw is written is that they reside or shall reside in one of the dwelling units. That is how the bylaw was written and was accepted at town meeting. Kathleen Donovan is also on the line if she would like to weigh in on any of it. But as far as the Department of Community Development is concerned, the application did satisfy the requirements to be able to apply as an ADU.
Katie, do you want to weigh in just for?
Sure, thank you. Katie Donovan, Director of Community Development. So the building commissioner will, before a building permit is issued for this, the building commissioner will have to review these documents and be satisfied with the residency requirements, not only for the property owner, but for the renter as well. So those are safeguards that we do have in place. Again, we will need to review those documents. So at this point, I think if Mr. Upson is correct and the property owner has their primary residence listed as Florida, they would have to, I think they would have to change their primary residence to Chatham.
Katie, this is Bob Hessler speaking, could we condition the approval based, I know that the building commissioner has to approve the documents or verify that they're accurate, but for the record, can we put in our approval the conditions that it's subject to the approval of the building commissioner? Or is
Yes,
is that necessary?
It's not necessary, but you could do it just to make sure that it's recorded with the special permit. So I don't see any reason why you couldn't put that condition into your approval.
Okay, thank you. Buck, any further questions?
Yeah, I'd like to get a little more specific on that if Katie could answer it. It's the number of months that appears not, well, we haven't talked about the number of months. If the applicant resides in Florida for 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, or 8 months, where does the building inspector draw the line? How is that taken care of? Or is the ADU, the bylaw passed at town meeting, silent on the definition?
It doesn't give a number of months that a person may be away from their home. It has to be their primary residence. And so I think that when the planning board was discussing the approval of the bylaw, what they were looking at, a lot of, one of the things was, the voting residence perhaps of the property owner. So they did not get into specifics, knowing that we do have a large population that may spend a few months away from town. So they didn't get into a specific number of months, but they did. That's why they called out primary residence for the property owner.
This is Bob Hessler again, but does Mrs. Roberts vote in Chatham? She doesn't.
She is not.
So Mrs. Roberts is on the line and she should be able to answer the question if you just give her a few seconds to unmute her microphone.
Okay, thank you.
Carrie Roberts, can you hear me?
Welcome.
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I vote in Florida, and I spend one more day in Florida and Chatham.
So she said that she spends one more day in Florida than she does in Chatham. So she does vote in Florida.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I
Mr.
may, this
Chairman.
is Katie Donovan again. So I think that for the building commissioner would have to be satisfied, so whether or not there would be a requirement to change that from a primary residence standpoint. It was one of the tools that the planning board was looking at for approving primary residence. But we would have to get satisfaction of the building commissioner before he would issue a building permit.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes.
Yeah, this is Ben Zender. And again, I don't want to speak for the town because your planning board and your town bodies really dictates what these bylaws should mean. But I would imagine that the purpose of that bylaw is to prevent people from renting out their properties other than one unit as an ADU and the other to be occupied by the principal resident. Carrie Roberts does not rent out that house, doesn't intend to rent out that house. It's just that she's splitting her time between Florida and Chatham, because of her lifestyle and other issues. So she'll do what's required in terms of meeting the residency requirement of the town to do that. But it's not that she's intending or anticipating, this house being used for anything other than occupancy by her of the main dwelling and then rental of the other unit as an ADU. So,
this is Bob Hester, the chairman. Well, unfortunately, the ADU bylaw is a little vague, but I think it applies more to, not that the main house is rented, but that there is a supervisory owner on site to make sure that the tenants are behaving themselves, that there's a contact person, that there are an opportunity to get in touch with somebody that's on site. That might not be necessary if she's renting to her daughter or to her cousin, but I think the intent of the bylaw was to make sure there's somebody there 24/7. And that is, unfortunately, the interpretation that the chairman is going to take, that somebody should be there year-round in order to oversee the site as an ADU.
Mr. Chairman, I think that may inject a requirement into the bylaw that's not written there, and that may provide a hurdle that many applicants won't be able to make. That somebody be there 24/7 to watch over their tenants. Again, I know less about this than the planning department does, but I think that the requirement here is that we demonstrate to the zoning board and the Board of Appeals that we meet the requirements for an ADU, and that the applicant has to demonstrate to the building inspector on an annual basis that she meets the requirements for residency, however that may be interpreted by the building commissioner.
Well, that involves making Massachusetts her legal residence, and that has all sorts of ramifications for somebody that's living in Florida. I still maintain that a 6-month absence is not residency in Chatham, regardless of whether she's here or in Florida. But let's move on and hear what the other people have to say. Buck, are you finished?
For now, I am. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Buck, signing off.
Mr. Semple, you're our attorney.
This is Paul Semple. I think that what Mrs. Roberts is saying basically is that she's attempting to maintain a Florida residence by having a 1 day more in Florida in order to qualify under their, among other things, estate planning requirements, and to avoid having a Massachusetts tax situation, among other issues. But it seems to me that it may be appropriate, since we're new at dealing with these ADUs, to perhaps continue this and allow the building commissioner and or the community development people to come in and explain to us how they intend to apply that particular residency question, because it will answer whether this does or does not qualify based on the information being provided to us. So I think maybe that input would be appropriate.
I would like to jump in here, Happy Van Sickle. I agree totally with you in that I think we need to have some information on this ADU since, as you said, we've only done one property. And I would think that if she's not here more than 6 months of the year, then she's not a resident of Chatham, and that's why we're even doing the ADU. So I would like to have a clarification from our town before we even act on this. Thanks.
Can I, this is David Beach, and I would, I actually don't, I mean, I have confidence that in the building commissioner and the department's ability to interpret and enforce the ADU bylaw. I'm hesitant for us to be attaching conditions and things with regard to these things. I think, you know, we can do our part and the building commissioner can do his part and it all can work. And I think what we've been presented with is enough material that, you know, I certainly would be in favor of it, but I would, you know, I'm just one member.
Well, you know what, this is Happy again. I don't agree, David. I don't think that we should be voting on something that we're not totally clear on. And I would prefer to be more in tune with what the ADU and the planning board. And I agree with Jay being our building inspector. But I still, once we do something, it's not exactly what the ADU was put in place with, we're going to have to wear that. So I would have to decline even voting.
Well, if I could just also say, I mean, yes, this is the second ADU that we've seen, but there can be other ADUs that can be applied for and granted that don't need action on the part of our board, that are also going to be subject to the same kinds of interpretations. I think you know, this one is before us because of the size of the lot and the frontage on the lot. The rest of the proposal meets the zoning requirements, the setbacks, the height, and various other things. So I'm inclined to be looking at that, not so much at whether we think the person is living, it meets the requirements as to be interpreted by the building commission.
Dennis.
Yeah, Dennis Sullivan. I have a question to the attorney. I'm looking at this affidavit of residence that was signed less than a month ago, where Caroline Roberts claimed that the Chatham property was her quote unquote principal residence. Is this form, this affidavit of residence form, is this a Chatham form or is this a universally accepted form that came out of somewhere else?
So, sorry, this is Sarah Clark. This is a Massachusetts and a Chatham accepted form for an affidavit of residence. It's similar to what we use for a homeowner, which is pulling a building permit for their own property. And it says that they shall reside or they shall reside in one of the dwelling units, which is, as I said, is very similar to what we use for our homeowner's license exemption form in the building department, which allows for a homeowner which resides or shall reside in the dwelling to be able to pull a building permit for their property.
Hey, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Sarah, this is Happy. Does this form have anything to do with the AD process?
It does. We do require that both a certificate or an affidavit of residency and then an annual affidavit for the lease agreement be submitted to our department. So prior to seeking approval for for the accessory dwelling unit, they must submit the affidavit, and then every year on an annual basis, they also have to submit the affidavit for the annual lease. So that way we know it's not being rented out as an Airbnb or something of that nature.
Right, but it does not say on any of these, this is Happy again, it doesn't say on any of these the amount of time that they must reside. Is that correct?
No, it does not. The initial form says that it either is their primary residence or they intend it to be their primary residence, which mimics the homeowner's license exemption, which is allowed under the building code for a resident or intended resident to pull a building permit for a dwelling in the town of Chatham.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
This is Ben Zender again. Just also to answer that question, the bylaw, the ADU bylaw under Section 5, monitoring, says that prior to the issuance of a building permit or a special permit if it's required, a certificate in the form of a notarized affidavit is required to be provided by the applicant either before the building inspector issues a by right permit for an ADU or before the Board of Appeals issues a special permit for an ADU. So that affidavit that you have in your package is the form that we were supplied by the town that we submitted as a part of the package. So it's my feeling and that, look, this question of residency doesn't come in front of this board if it's a by right application. But what's really in front of this board is the fact that it's a non-conforming lot and it's a separately detached structure. So that question of whether or not Ms. Roberts meets the residency requirement is to be made by the building commissioner. And if in fact we disagree with his determination, then that may be an issue that's appealed to this board. But I don't think it's really before this board to make that initial determination about residency. Second thing is, Carrie Roberts signed that affidavit because she fully intends to comply with the requirements for residency that may be established by the building inspector in order to utilize this permit. If she can't, if the building inspector actually comes back and requires some level of occupancy that she can't maintain, then she won't be able to actually pull a building permit and won't be able to use this property for an ADU, in which case you wouldn't be able to put a kitchen in there.
Well, I think that's all the more reason, Mr. Semple's request, that you request a continuance until we get some type of clarification from the building inspector, because the law says you have to be a year-round resident, and being in Florida 6 months and 1 day is clearly not a year-round resident. And we are accountable to we're not accountable, we're accountable to the courts of Massachusetts. We interpret and act upon the bylaws proposed and voted upon by the planning board. And the planning board wrote the language year-round resident. It's our obligation to vote on that condition, and I don't think it's being met. So all the more reason for you to request continuance. Before we go any further, I'd like Mr. Thompson to weigh in.
Mr. Hessler, this is Dave Thompson. I'm inclined to agree with Mr. Semple and you that we should ask Mr. Zender to apply for a continuance until we hear exactly where we stand on this. I don't want to put my name on the line either.
Mr. Chairman, if the board would like, we can seek comment from the planning board as to what the intent was. I know we always, on every application, seek comment from the building commissioner. However, at this moment, he is unavailable. Therefore, he can't log into the meeting to be able to speak to this aspect of it. But comment is always sought on every application from the building commissioner. But if the board would like, I can also seek comment from the planning board as to what the intent was.
Yes, that would be great.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
This is Buck speaking. In light of what Sarah just said, seeking comments from the planning board, I listened to a lot of the promoting and selling and getting this idea of ADUs. It was a long education process, and there was a lot of benefits and goals that this would satisfy. And so maybe we're not supposed to say what the intent of the law is, but I clearly remember some of the comments made by the planning board members of what the intent of why they were so supportive of ADUs. And I think it's imperative that we get them to weigh in on this. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
This is Ben Zunder. I'm a little concerned about the path this is going down because the planning board created a bylaw and they put it out there and it was codified as a part of your zoning bylaw. The building inspector interprets and enforces that bylaw. And I think it's completely appropriate to have us apply to the building inspector for a determination as to whether or not Ms. Roberts is in fact it's her principal residence. And it's not year round. It's not in the bylaw. It says whether it's your principal residence. And I think it's important for us to provide that information to your board so that you can make your determination. But to open up a can of worms and go back to the planning board and say, well, what did you mean by that? Is going to be injecting into this determination information and opinion that isn't codified in the bylaw and may or may not be accurate in terms of how it educates you. Or put a different way, I don't think it's for your board to determine whether or not Carrie Roberts has this property as her principal residence. It's up to the building inspector, and for us to apply to the building inspector, get that determination, and possibly appeal that determination to this board, or hopefully it will be sufficient for this board to issue this permit. With regard to the intention of the bylaw, I think the intention of the bylaw was to create ADU housing, which I don't think there's any question that this unit that's being created or would be created is going to meet those requirements, both in terms of dimensional requirements and also in terms of rentable requirements. What we're talking about is whether Carrie Roberts meets the principal residence requirement for being able to have this ADU on her property. And I think that's the building inspector's call. And so I'm a little worried.
Opinion, and that's what attorneys are paid to do, is offer opinions. But as my opinion of chairman of this board, she is not meeting the requirements of the bylaw.
This is David Beach. It's my opinion as a member that I am in agreement with, as presented by Mr. Zender. I think we're off on the wrong tangent here, but that's my opinion.
All right, well, let's take a vote. If you're not going to take the opportunity to request a continuance so we can get a clarification from Jay Briggs, then we'll take a vote.
Well, Mr. Chairman, this is Paul Semple. It seems to me that we have perhaps some information that was not available before, and that's the statement by Mrs. Roberts that she intends to or does spend a day more in Florida than she does in Chatham. And I think clearly that's intended to establish a residency or domicile in Florida as opposed to Chatham. If that's true, under those circumstances, I don't see how the ZBA could necessarily approve an application which requires a residency in Chatham. Now, one way to resolve this, it seems to me, is to find out how the building inspector intends to interpret that term so that we know whether we are or not an appropriate location to grant special permit. We can't grant a special permit if, in fact, the residency affidavit is not appropriate in terms of the facts of the situation.
Mr. Semple, while I was on mute, I just got off the phone with the building commissioner. He is more than willing to provide comment to the board. However, he is unavailable at this time to do so. So if the board and the applicant was to deem that a continuance was appropriate, he would be willing to provide a comment for the next available meeting.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
This is Ben Zender again. I would respectfully request a continuance to allow us to present information to the building inspector and to allow the building inspector to provide comment to this board.
when's the next one? There, May 26th?
So the earliest meeting we have available would be May 28th. And time to be determined, whether it's a virtual meeting or a regular meeting. If it's a regular meeting, it would be 4 p.m. If it's a virtual meeting, at this point, we're going to have, I believe, 8 applications on. So the chair may wish to start early, but I know we're supposed to continue it to a date and time specific, which makes it a little more difficult.
Yeah, since we could do it the 28th.
So the 28th would be the earliest we could continue it to of May.
Right.
This is Paul Temple. I'll move to approve an application for continuance to May 28th, 2020.
David Veach, second.
Mr. Semple, vote.
I vote aye. Paul Semple.
Mr. Veach.
David Veach, aye.
Happy Van Sickle.
Happy Van Sickle, aye.
Mr. Thompson.
Mr. Thompson votes aye also.
And Chairman Bob Hessler votes for the continuance as well. So we will see you again in about a month.
Thank you all for your time, and I hope you all stay safe and well.
We will. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
We have to discuss minutes.
The minutes we need to approve are of March 12th, 2020.
This is Paul Temple. I'll move to approve the minutes. I made one suggested change to it, but I think that's been made. So I'll move to approve the minutes as submitted.
David.
David Veach, I wasn't present for that meeting, so I don't know if that affects my ability to second or participate in the vote.
So if Paul or if Dave hasn't reviewed the previous minutes and the meeting, he would not be able to second or vote. So it would be Buck would be the voter on the minutes from the last meeting because he was the alternate that voted in Mr. Veach's place.
This is Buck speaking. I actually read the minutes.
Good thing we're not on TV. Oh, do you second, or does he have to propose, Sarah? I didn't hear what you said, actually.
No, he could just second the motion if he wishes to do so.
This is Buck. He seconds the motion.
All in favor, Mr. Semple.
Mr. Semple votes aye.
David Can't. Happy.
Happy Van Sickle votes aye.
And I vote yes. Bob Hessler, Mr. Nixon's not here, so is that enough? And Buck votes yes.
Buck needs to vote as well.
Thompson
votes yes.
Dave Thompson.
Mr. Thompson votes yes also.
So the minutes are approved.
The minutes are approved by a motion by Paul, second by Buck with a 4-0 because Mr. Nixon was not available. The next thing we need is just a motion to adjourn.
Paul Semple, I'll move to adjourn.
I'll second. This is Buck.
All in favor, starting with Paul.
Paul Semple votes aye.
David Veach.
David Veach votes aye.
Happy Van Sickle.
Happy Van Sickle votes aye.
Mr. Thompson.
Mr. Thompson votes aye also, sir.
And Bob Hessler votes yes as well. It's 5:22 p.m. on the 23rd of April. We are finished and adjourned.